what is it called, Mike? I think you own one, the Steam Link. Like,
Yeah, I got the Steam Link.
I've got one as well.
Oh, okay. I don't know if they still sell it,
use it.
but I was like, I wonder if I could just play downstairs on my big TV with a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse, trying to play Deus Ex downstairs.
Probably could. Yeah.
I don't know. I might try it one day. Anyway, let's get into our final feature of the day. So today we're going to go through LA Noire, an Australian game, amazingly. And it's part of our Game of Some Other Year 2011 nominee specials. So we're going to do, and I'm going to quote Swinny, a close investigation of the classic noir thriller from Team Bondi, not Bondi, Team Bondi and Rockstar, obviously. So LA Noire, as I said, came out in 2011. Pretty like revolutionary game, mostly because of the way that they did mocap, like facial capture, voice capture. I guess jumping straight into some.
Before we jump into LA Noire, I just want to clarify for anyone that doesn't know all our nominees. I think.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, you take it away.
The 6 Game of Some Other Year 2011 nominees are LA Noire, of course, Minecraft, which we've covered previously as a special, Super Mario 3D Land, which we've also covered, Deus Ex Human Revolution, which I believe we're covering next in
2 weeks' time. Yep.
Mm-hmm. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, and the 6th nominee is Dark Souls. So they're the 6. Thanks. Just wanted to clarify.
So the idea for the whole Game of Some of the Year is, with the passage of time, we can clearly look at these games rather than looking through the lens of the year that they get released, which could have hype or PR or all these other kind of factors. And also sometimes you can look at a game and go, is it really that amazing with the passage of time? So yeah, LA Noire, I think it's probably one of the games that, to me, benefited with the passage of time rather than diminished. Like, when it came out, obviously it had an impact, but I think even looking back now, it's like pretty crazy, I guess, how it's had a massive influence on gaming. But then also, like, how many games are still like this and are trying to achieve the things that this game does? So, like, Swinny, did you play this when it came out, like in 2011?
Yeah, so I don't know if I played it close to launch, but I didn't play it that much long after. Played it on the 360. Really enjoyed it back then. Enjoyed the DLC that they released after as well, which I think they worked into the re-release, which I believe you guys have played. So
you have to do it in the re-release.
Yeah, so you may not, there's some that you may not have realised are or aren't DLC unless you looked it up. I think it was a great experience back then. As much as you said, there's games that have tried to be like this, honestly, I've never played another game like this before, since this. It is such a unique game, and I think, as much as it did get obviously got a huge amount of bars, it was quite critically acclaimed and stuff, I still think it's quite underappreciated in what it achieved.
Yeah, it's almost like a cult classic, but it was popular, but not.
Well, I think people just didn't understand how special this game was at the time, because it's very, like, how can I say? It's very experimental, and it takes a lot of chances, and not all of them are amazing. We'll maybe get to some of that stuff, but overall, like, what they achieved with this game is quite phenomenal, I think.
And can I just, like, because definitely there's like so many different threads that I want to pick up on there. For me, just to cover kind of almost mechanically the game. So Mike and I both played it on the Switch. And that incorporates the DLC missions, all of them that ever got released. Not the VR ones, because that's obviously VR, but all the ones that got released into the main body as if that's the way it was built.
Yeah.
And I think, to me personally, it does a disservice for the game. So I the only reason why I found out that all those DLC were incorporated in the flow of the game is because at a certain point in the game, I was like, this game feels like it's dragging on a bit, right? And when I checked it all out and looked at the timing, I think
you can see why, yeah.
I would have been finished with the game on its Xbox 360 release. But because they've included all these cases, like some of the desks, so, just to call out, the game, has Cole, who's the protagonist of the game, and he progresses his career after participating in World War II. his policing career through different desks. So he starts off with traffic, then goes to homicide. It's always weird to me because I always think homicide should be the last one.
That's what I thought too. Yeah,
Yeah. But they cover that in the game.
That's the beauty.
Yeah,
of the
they cover it
structure.
in the game. Yeah, homicide, etc. So one of the
Vice.
desks was meant to be 3 cases, but then in the Switch version, it's like 5. So even when I was playing, I was like, man, this feels like it's dragging on. Like, what the hell?
And I remember one of the cases. It felt like it wasn't as good as the other ones.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I just remember one of them, and I remember thinking, there's a few parts where I'm not gonna ruin the case itself, but you basically have to follow a lady, and even though you are literally right behind her, somehow she manages to catch a taxi to get to some faraway place that you have to then get to, which makes absolutely no sense. And it was almost kind of, it definitely broke the experience a little bit. And then I looked it up, and I'm pretty sure that's one of the DLCs.
Yeah.
So it's weird that you're forced to do those because you have to do every single mission or every single case, including the DLC ones, to progress the story. And it definitely felt like it dragged on.
Honestly, I know it's important, obviously, what you guys are saying, your experience. I don't want that to put a mark on the game that was released in 2011.
No,
No, absolutely not.
That's
No,
why I wanted to
Yeah,
call it
yeah.
out, Swinny, because I'm actually mentally kind of going, you know what? I'm going to like almost, give it more credit and push some of that
same.
stuff out because I totally enjoyed this game. Like I was like caught up in it, playing it like all the time and that's the beauty of the Switch. Obviously, you can fire it up for like 20 minutes, put it down really quickly. I really got into it. Like, once it started going, I was just like, oh, I'm just playing it to just see what happens next. And
same. I actually want to see the full story. I want to see. So I haven't finished it. So just to be clear as well, I think I quickly looked it up before the show, just to see without spoiling anything for myself, how many missions there are, and I am at the very end of Vice, and so that's probably like 80% of the way through. So I think I've experienced, a good massive chunk of the game, to be able to properly talk about it. But
it is one of
I
those
actually
weird
want to
games.
finish it.
Well, I kind of want you to get to the ending, and obviously
I absolutely will
because I hate
get to the
spoilers,
ending.
but
I want to finish it. I'm actually drawn into the story, and I want to see what happens.
one thread that I want to pull on that you sort of threw out there, Swinny, was just about the experimentation. Not saying that no game has ever done this, but generally with video games, think of the classic one, like Legend of Zelda. You have a voiceless protagonist in Link who, in the whole history of the game, of 35 years, has never said a word in any single game, right? Like, it's the whole idea of you are Link, you can be whoever you want, really, because he doesn't really have a personality, and they kind of structure it like that. Whereas this game, I thought it was quite fascinating. Like, you're playing as this character, Cole, but you're playing a character, but it's really almost like a film, like a noir film where it's, you're not really kind of doing the choices that Cole's doing. You're kind of part watching a movie, part playing the movie. And there's things that happen in the story and beats in the story where it's like, well, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Cole is a very interesting protagonist. He's very unlikable in many ways.
Yes, extremely unlikable in a lot of ways.
But there's also other times when you're rooting for him because it feels like he's hard done by.
I like Cole.
And I think he's acted fantastically by Aaron Staton, who's, from Mad Men and things like that. And it was,
that's all I could think all the way through.
Very, very weird for me watching Mad Men after playing this game. Whereas the opposite for you guys, because I'm watching Mad Men just thinking that he's Cole Phelps the whole time.
Oh, that's funny.
And he also, I was the opposite. And he also, especially in like the first season of Mad Men, plays also an unlikable person there. So it's interesting. But I 100% get what you're saying. It kind of feels like there's times when you're in control and times when you're not, which is interesting.
Yeah, and like I hate spoilers, and this game came out like 10 years ago, so I'm not going to refer to them, but there are definite story beats where something happens in the game, and I'm like, huh? Like, I'm not doing that. I wouldn't do that. What's going on? And then I was thinking, it must be like the game's tricking you. He hasn't actually done the thing that they're saying he's done. And then you find out, no, he has. He's really done that thing, and you're like, Okay, like what? Like, am I a bastard? Like, what's going on here?
So with the story, I'm not going to spoil anything with this, but the actual like case to case and the storyline that goes from desk to desk, I think is fantastic. The overarching narrative, not so much for me. I mean, it's interesting, but it's also it relies so much on coincidence and things that just feel like wait, that person's also related to this. Like what? You know, it
Yeah,
just
I know,
feels
I know.
it feels very
I know.
unrealistic
I
with
know.
that. But when it comes to the storyline, the cases and desks, I think it is great.
They're really good. And
But just before we move on that, Swinny, it's like I totally agree, but then in a weird way, this game is a bit of a love letter to the noir genre.
Yeah, that's a
and
good point.
and they always have that thing of, the person that is the person that's like behind this crazy scheme, and it's like it's a 1 in a million chance, but it's like all of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
movies are like that. Or the other thing they do is they have a completely random thing that comes into it, like a random element, person, whatever, and it's like, what's the chance of that as well? Like, it's a tough one. I got the same sense as
yeah,
you. It felt like really like all of this shit's connected. Like, but then it's like, well, that's actually how it does work in
well, I
noir
mean, you can
films.
see. I think Homicide is an interesting one because you obviously know something's going on, and again, it's so hard to talk about some of the stuff without spoiling anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But I have to admit, at the end of it, even though it was pretty obvious something was going on, what the reveal was really disappointing. I'm like, really him? Huh, okay, fair enough. Like, it didn't really. I don't know. It
Kind of didn't
maybe
earn the moments.
no, it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't. Yeah. So the actual parts themselves, the cases themselves were fantastic to kind of figure out and stuff, and I think we should very quickly talk about that as well with the fact that you got to keep track in your mind about some of the stuff. You have a notebook that you can refer to, and for those that haven't played it, when the game kind of boils down, other than the driving and a bunch of other mechanics, it boils down to you investigating a crime scene and collecting a bunch of clues by investigating objects, dead bodies, etc. And then you keep track of those clues in your notebook. And then the second big component is interrogating the witnesses. And there's three options, which originally they were actually labeled something different in the original 2011 game, and subsequently in the new release, it's different. Which is why I see all those memes with press X to doubt. That doesn't exist anymore. It's
Yeah,
now
I,
bad cop and good cop, which
I
is
didn't
kind of
know. I
confusing,
didn't know
right?
that all the way
Yeah.
through until like right at the end, and I was like, "Why did they change that?" It
That's
feels like
different.
it's so much
I actually don't know why they changed
more
that.
obvious. The
I'd
original
love.
descriptors.
I feel like the original descriptions were almost more obvious, yeah, and it almost more obvious because sometimes it's hard to. So in the new version, you get good cop, bad cop, and accuse. And in the original, it's truth, I think, doubt, and I don't remember the first one, and lie. And basically, the first two are pretty obvious. Like good cop and bad cop is good cop is you're sort of more empathetic towards the person, and you don't necessarily think they're lying. Bad cop tends to be you definitely think they're lying, you take a really hard stance. And then accuse is where you accuse them of a particular thing, but you need some evidence to prove that. So you need to have made sure that you've collect the right amount of evidence, and then you can actually go through the notebook and pick the particular evidence that you think links them to that thing that they're lying about. And it's really awesome because it's sometimes not completely straightforward, and you have to keep flicking back between your notebook and going, oh, what did this person say? Or what was this clue that I found that completely, proves that this person's lying in this particular instance? And at the start of the game, I don't know if you guys sort of felt the same. It wasn't pretty obvious what to select. I was like, is this person lying? Am I supposed to
Dude,
select lie,
I was
good
getting
cop, bad cop?
destroyed at the start of the game.
So was I. But then you kind of get it. It clicks.
Yeah.
And it becomes very obvious when someone's lying in terms of like their facial expressions, twitches, stuff like that, that it becomes a lot easier to pick that up. But what becomes a little hard still is, am I supposed to still be a good cop with this particular person or a bad cop? pick the bad cop
I
option.
know.
Bad cop is pretty much most of the time. Like it's rarish. Not I
But
would
that's
say
why
rarish,
doubt
but
makes more sense because
doubt did make more sense.
well,
Yeah.
I probably should have just thought about that all the way through. Just like think of it as doubt because good cop, bad cop. It's more like, how do I want to frame this discussion? Not like what I'm thinking about what you're saying. So I just thought it was a really bad way to re-describe it.
Yeah, I don't understand that change. Obviously, I haven't played the new one, but when I saw that, I'm like, that's like, unless they've reworked some stuff,
No,
which
they didn't.
that doesn't seem like it would apply in every situation.
Exactly. So
yeah, it's a bit weird in some situations.
And I got to also be careful about like what we're talking about, right?
Don't spoil, yeah.
There was stuff where it's like because and this is kind of going off a little bit, but maybe we need to move on. But like the game deals with really heavy, crazy, serious topics, sometimes very flippantly, like pedophilia and all this other kind of stuff. It was just like, oh, it's just thrown out there. Like, oh, this is what
it's one of the most adulty games I have ever played.
And why I'm bringing it up is because this whole truth doubt thing that kind of makes more sense. But there's sometimes where you have to ask victims, right, of these crimes, and you have to do the good cop bad cop thing. And I'm like, why would you do bad cop to like a victim of like, sexual assault or something? But
Yeah.
I've looked at the answers, and the answers were you were meant to do bad cop.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is crazy.
Because sometimes you need to be forceful with people.
Yeah, but see, doubt makes more sense. It's like someone could say something and you're like, I kind of doubt what they're saying, right?
Or they're they're stressed and
correct.
You kind of like doubt their recalling of this.
Yeah, but bad cop, like, are you really going bad cop on?
Well,
on
I don't know.
Underage person.
The problem is the different things. That you know what I mean? Like doubting someone is different than being a bad cop to someone.
That's our point.
They're completely different.
That's the thing.
things.
That's why it's so
it's
stupid.
weird how they've
like
had to change them. Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to go back to the adult themes. Man, this game like shocked me. Like
it's insane.
like the dead bodies and all this other kind of stuff, and like investigating the bodies. And I was just like,
the
whoa.
racism. I mean, look, it's set in the late 40s, but still.
Once you get to the arson desk,
oh, that's insane.
It gets worse.
There's some unsettling stuff there.
Wow. Okay, because it's pretty unsettling as is, right? Pretty damn unsettling as is.
I think overall the arson desk and that whole run through is the worst.
Wow. I'm not looking forward to that.
Because as I said, it's like some stuff I feel like, I don't know, Swinny, am I being too aggressive? But it feels like a little bit flippant the way that I don't know, maybe the times were different 10 years ago. Maybe I'm looking at it from a 2021.
Myself. I didn't.
Yeah, I honestly think it's handled pretty well, but it's also been a while since I played through the whole game. So.
I think it's handled extremely well. Even for like 2011, 2021 standards, it's an extremely well handled game.
I think there's one in particular, and I don't want to spoil the game, right? But there's a situation where it's like someone's like 50 something years old, and they're with a 12-year-old in the game, right? And it's kind of like not really brought up as a like crazy thing. Like it's very like flippant in my opinion how they managed that whole part of the case.
Yeah, they didn't hold back in the game.
And it shocked me. I was like, whoa, what the hell? Like, are we just moving on from this? Like, really? I don't know. The game's
but here's the thing, though. It covers so many crazy topics like that.
Yeah.
That it's hard for it to go into detail of every single one. Because it literally, the whole spectrum of police work and detective work and the crazy, horrible things that can happen from drugs to murder to... I won't mention everything else. It covers pretty much the whole spectrum.
Anything, so, any crime, yeah.
Any crime, it goes there.
I just want to talk about the gameplay a bit and some of the mechanics.
Yeah.
So we talked about the investigation mechanics, and he said, there's some other stuff, but that's where I think it's important to kind of look into, because the game does move between those investigation, interrogation scenes and also like action set pieces. So whether or not it's a chase sequence in a car driving, or if it's a shootout. So this game actually has third-person shooting combat. And honestly, it's not too bad.
And fighting
it's pretty
combat.
good, yeah. And fighting.
Well, I was about to get to that. So,
sorry.
So the shooting combat, it's actually handled. It's pretty good. But then the hand-to-hand stuff just feels so shoehorned and so unnecessary. It's not horrible, but you're like, this game really didn't need this. And there's also a couple of there is one particular section that is unfortunately a bit of a spoiler in the last desk in Arson, that I think it's probably the low point of the game for me, but from a gameplay standpoint. But the great thing that this game does...
Oh, I'm trying to actually think what you're talking about, because I played through that.
There's a chase
No
sequence.
spoilers,
There's a
please.
chase sequence, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
But the great thing that this game does, and I've got a first-hand account of it as well, is it allows you to skip any of those scenes. And I think,
that's true.
That is absolutely fantastic for the nature of this game, because I know someone that actually was very interested in playing this game and really enjoyed it, but they're a very casual gamer. They're just like, I'm just not interested in doing the action part of it. They just wanted to be a detective. They wanted to follow the story.
That's awesome.
And I think it's fantastic they added this in, because when you think back to 2011, there weren't many other games that allow you to skip entire massive sections of a game and only focus on like the story. Like story mode wasn't really a thing for many games back then. So I think that's a huge credit to Team Bondi or Rockstar, whoever made the decision to add that in, because it I think opened the game up to a whole range of group of people to experience.
I only skipped one thing once. I was following a lady. Yeah, because I had to do a mission where I was following a lady and I kept getting busted.
Oh, yeah. I got busted a couple of times.
So I'm not good at following ladies. I'm being a creep.
Thank God.
Thank God.
Yeah, I think we're all supporters of when devs do these kind of things, like add mechanics in the game to make it easier for some people, because I've always thought it's optional, right? Like, and I certainly I'm not a believer in forcing developers to do it, or like having an issue if they don't do that, like Dark Souls not having like a difficulty level. Like, that's the choice of the developer. But if they do that, then it's like, that's fine, doesn't bother me. So, and I kind of wish more games did it. I know, really random point, but I kind of wish like Monster Hunter Rise had some kind of auto battle sort of ability, because I know people that would play that game just to harvest and do all the stuff and, you know, craft and do all the crazy shit that you can do in Monster Hunter Rise, but they just will never get the action down, so they'll never play it. So
speaking of skippable stuff, side missions, did you guys do many of them?
No. Very little.
Okay. So I did like 25 out of the 40.
Oh, wow.
I did whatever I needed to do to get the completion back then, so I'm sure that
probably included all 40 of them.
That probably involved most of them.
Probably. They were a little repetitive.
But that actually reminds me of something I really like about the game, is that other than those action sequences, the game doesn't let you fail.
No, you can.
In the investigations, really.
No,
you can't fail the investigations. You can screw up majorly, and it changes some stuff. But
yeah, but that's not
right. You can't really fail an investigation.
The whole thing is, but what it does is it just makes you feel like crap, because you just feel stupid.
You're an idiot.
You're like, oh man, I got that so wrong. Wow. You know?
It's a weird game in that way, because I, at the end of the game, looked back and saw my status across all the cases. And at the start, I didn't know what I was doing. And I have to say, kind of partly, I was playing the game in a dumb way. Like, I didn't have sound on for a bunch of the game at the start. And the game actually relies on sound a lot. Like, the game will give you audio cues when you've completed, like, all the clues in a certain area. Or even, you know, subtle clues when they're talking, you know. So, like, I was just going by what they were looking like and the words at the bottom, but that's so dumb.
Oh, yeah.
Right? No, you need it.
That musical cue thing, oh my god, that would have... Yeah, that's so integral to this.
Yeah, so I didn't have that.
Super handy, yeah.
But I was, like, going through the cases, completely failing them. Like, accusing the wrong person, everything, right? And then I just progressing. I'm like... At the start, I had to admit, I was like, this game is so stupid. It's like, it doesn't penalize you at all. It doesn't give you a different path to go down or anything like that. And I honestly do think even at the end, it's still clunky how it's just kind of like go from point A to B to C to D, and then you'll get through the case. So like,
yeah, I find that, I have to admit, I found that even though I found the cases themselves interesting in their own way, I found that a little repetitive. And again, I don't know if that's because of the DLC and the fact that it was padded out too much by the time we played this version of it. And it may not have suffered from that in the original. But I did find that after a while, it kind of, I'm like, all right, what am I investigating now? All right, here we go. Same thing again. I got to do this. I got to interview this person. They're going to tell me some shit. Obviously, they're lying. Okay, here we go. What's this piece of evidence I got to do? So there was a bit of repetition like that. But I actually think it might just be because of it. The padding due to the DLCs, that I think the original game didn't suffer from memory when I played it back then as much.
Yeah, I definitely think the padding serves a detriment to the game. I
It
would have
does,
liked,
especially because it's forced.
yeah, I would have liked it to be like at a later date I can go through the DLC.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, oh, cool. Like, there's some extra missions that I can play after playing the main one. Because I'd look there and go, I feel like the real game was kind of like, you know, what they'd made originally. And all those extras are sort of... Because some of them were really weird, the way that you had to get them. It was like, you had to buy it at GameStop in America to get that specific mission. It's like, they obviously did not care about that mission as much as the common main
Might have been the
missions.
mission I did that I
I'm,
didn't like.
I'm mindful of time. We've kind of already talked about that for a bit.
Yeah.
I was just going to say my last kind of call out for this whole thing is I think the game has absolutely fantastic music.
Yes, I was going to say that too. I love the music.
It is great. And part of that is they work the motifs into those musical cues. So it's actually like the music is also kind of almost intertwined with the gameplay in a lot of ways. So.
I want to listen to the soundtrack. And it's one of the coolest soundtracks. It's so unique because of the era. There's not that many games set in that era, first of all. It's got a really cool soundtrack.
Yeah, the one thing, and I don't think we've mentioned it so far, is that in a weird way, this game is an open world game, but extremely linear game as well.
Well, it's linear in the sense that it's linear if you... so it doesn't have the same level of world detail, I think, as something like GTA. And the problem is there's nothing that requires you to go and just explore the world randomly. Like, I've driven around just for the hell of it and stuff like that, but there's nothing to really...
Well, its open world is for... Well, I think there might be some collectibles and stuff, but the open world is for the setting.
It's
and
just
I
for the
love
setting,
that.
yeah.
I love the fact
Yeah.
that people complained about it. I think that's a positive for this game.
Oh, massive positive.
The fact that they just decided, like, they put in so much hard work just to make you feel like you're in like the 1940s LA. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, and they've structured the whole city so you can go anywhere, and it's all the cases and the desks play out in different sections of the city, and it feels like a real kind of world. Like it's really well achieved, and it's funny, but it's a bit similar to Alan Wake, where Alan Wake was originally meant to be an open world game with a day-night cycle, and then they shelved that and made it extremely linear. But because they had the foundation of a kind of a real area where they've really thought about all the areas and how they connect, I think it really added to the game. And I think it adds to this game as well. It does feel really weird, the fact that they've got this whole open world and you're kind of stuck on a very linear, main quest structure with no real side quests.
Yeah, there's no... You don't just go to a random question mark and it opens up a new mission or anything.
Yeah.
You get a case and there's points of interest you have to go to between the case and within that case, and that's kind of it. And you just drive around between that.
Yeah. Hey, look, like my last thing that I wanted to say about it is like it's a very fascinating game. It's well worth playing. It's awesome that it's an Australian game. Like I don't know, I guess like Hollow Knight would be up there, but it'd probably be up there as one of the greatest Australian games that was ever made.
This one absolutely is, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's well worthy of being a nominee for the Game of some other year, 2011.
I'm so glad I played it again. There's a couple of really quick things I wanted to touch on. Thank you. Yes.
Hey, I did. What are you talking about? I pushed for this game as well.
I'm the only one that had it in my list when we did the shortlist.
Well, I got it in my shortlist. I'm looking through it right now.
Was this the one that I said I'm adding it to the list just so I can play it?
No, anyway, I just wanted to just make that.
So, a couple of really quick things is that I
No, wait a second. I'm looking at mine. I had it in mine, Swinny. Thank you very much.
I remember differently.
Batman, Arkham City, Dark Souls, Skyrim, LA Noire, Skyward Sword, Minecraft, Portal 2, and 3D World.
Okay.
3D Land.
I remember differently, but I'll trust you on that one.
You remember differently? I'm like reading from the list.
I just said I'll trust you on that one.
All right.
He may have altered the list, though.
No, I did not.
Maybe he altered the evidence.
Go on. What are your closing points?
A couple of really quick closing points. Number one that I found quite fascinating is that there's no Hollywood sign in the game, which is the iconic sign. It's called the Hollywood Land sign in the game.
But that's what it was back then.
What?
In the 40s, that's what it said.
Did it actually say Hollywood Land? Are you pulling my leg, or is that true?
I'm like 95% sure. It used to be called the Hollywood Land.
I thought it was because of copyright issues they couldn't say Hollywood because the actual sign's copyrighted. We
Yeah,
gotta
I'm
look
just
into
looking at.
this
Yeah,
now.
yeah. It used to be Hollywood Land. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Wow. Okay, cool to know. And the other thing, which we kind of touched upon, but I think it's really worth just mentioning again, is the facial capture and the animations. To this day, it's still some of the best I've seen.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that.
Like by far, some of the best I've seen. The technology that they used, I feel like it hasn't really been used that well anywhere else. There's just it's incredible actually, even by today's standards. And I'm lucky I've been playing it on the Switch and handheld, so the resolution and the quality isn't as much of an impact. But man, I was blown away how awesome the animations were. For like not only for a 2011 game, but even by today's standards, it's insanely good.
I do find it funny that 6 years after this game came out, and this game gets a lot of shit. So unfortunately, I have to add to the pile. But this game comes out then 6 years later, so that's almost a whole generation of gaming. Then Mass Effect Andromeda comes out with the facial animation.
I know, right?
And it's unfair because one game is like probably the pinnacle of facial animations versus one of the lower ones. But
no, but I feel like it's weird. They haven't really. I don't recall. And Swinny, maybe you might remember this. If there's any games that have really used that kind of tech since.
I mean, I don't know if this specific tech that Team Bondi developed, but there's certainly mocap being done.
Of course there is, but this particular tech and the way they've achieved it and how good it is, I feel like it didn't really go anywhere after that.
Well, that is where you could say that probably that was a vast time of their development went into probably this part of the performance capture and everything. Like that was what the game was kind of heralded for, really. So,
you know what? I hope one day we're popular enough that we can get some of the people from Team Bondi, and we can do a retrospective on the game and get pick their brains on the development of the game. I'd love to do that.
And why we never got to see Horror of the Orient.
I know.
That's quite wild.